In this lesson, we're going to talk about how Python loops work. So the first loop I'd like to introduce is the for loop. And for those of you who may have programmed a for loop before in a different language, Python's for loop is pretty different. So instead of, for example, a C or Java style for loop where you typically have an integer and a beginning condition and a comparison and you're incrementing it every time you go through the loop, Python's for loop iterates over a collection of items, so typically a list or a tuple. So let's make a quick list here. All right, and then the way the for loop works is you simply say for, and then you give it a variable name like x, and you can say for x in items. And then, of course, we use a colon to start a block because the code we want to execute inside the for loop has to be indented to create a new block. Let's just print it out. So this is going to go ahead and print out all of the items in the list. So the loop is going to iterate for as many items as there are in whatever list you're using to iterate over. And each time it iterates, this variable, whatever you name it, doesn't have to be x. It could be item for item in items, and so you get the same output. So it like I said, it iterates for each item in a list. And sometimes you just want to iterate for a known number of times, and so you might be thinking, well, this might be a little bit inconvenient. What if I don't have a list that I iterate over? I just know I need to, process 100 tags, and I don't want to have to make a list of all my tags. Don't worry, Python has a convenience method to do that for you. So there's a built-in function called range. So range, and it takes a number. So I could say, range 30. And now let's print out items and see what it looks like. And you can see that range 30 basically just creates a list of integers going from 0 up to 1 minus the total you gave it, right? So there's 30 integers in this list. And so if you need to use a for loop to iterate a certain number of times and you want an integer to be an index for you for your list, you simply say for x in range, say 10. So this would be functionally very equivalent to a C or Java style for loop, where you said something like, for x equals 0, x less than 10, x plus plus. This is the same kind of thing. And the nice thing about this is that in Python, it's much more readable, right? I mean, for x in range 10 is got a very nice readability to it. So that is the for loop in Python. And there's also a while loop. So the while loop is pretty simple. It simply takes a condition. So you could say, x is equal to 10, and while x is greater than or equal to 0, print x, and let's decrement x by 1. This minus equals is a shortcut for doing something like x equals x minus 1. Same thing. And so now you can see I'm running this loop 11 times, going from 10 to 0. And the last thing to talk about with loops are the continue and break statements. So let's go back to our for example. So we're going to say for x in range 100. And I'm going to say if x is divisible by 2, continue, else print x. And what this does you can see is that it's printing out all of the odd numbers. So what continue does is it basically says, hey, I know that I'm in a loop, but I don't want to keep executing my loop code. Continue with the next iteration of the loop, if there is one. There's also a break command, which basically exits a loop early. So I could say something like elif x greater than 50 break. And this will break us out of the loop. So you can see now I'm printing up all the odd numbers up to 50. So even though there's 50 more numbers that I haven't processed, break says don't worry about the condition of what I'm looping through, just break out of the loop entirely, and then execution will continue down here. So you can see again that it's very important to understand how blocks are defined using indentation. That's why this print command needed to not be indented at all, because we want it to take place after the entire loop has finished.